everyone, Tony D with another hot take. I've got to talk about this. This is really bugging me. Some people in the regular media, let's say, are now trying to promote this narrative that we were unprepared and look at South Korea and what a job they did. Now, I have many South Korean fans. Hi, how you doing? So this isn't a slam against you, but you know, I think we all know South Korea is a very different country from the United States. And for my United States brethren, I'd like to put it in context for you. The United States has a population of roughly 330, 350 million people. South Korea is right about 50 million. And it's pretty densely populated, but 50 million is the population. So that's 1/7 approximately of the United States. They initially did do a pretty good job with the beer virus. So they kept it mostly under wraps. I probably shouldn't even bother to hide it for this video, right? I should probably just say it. But anyhow, the beer virus was under wraps in SK pretty well. But you have to understand it's a different culture in South Korea. According to their stats, it's more homogenous than the United States, which means that most people in South Korea are Korean. The vast majority, over 95%. The biggest minority in South Korea is the Chinese minority, which numbers about a little over 1 million people. Roughly 2% of their population. So for South Koreans, that is the biggest minority. So you could understand that when a virus that comes out of China hits, that the South Koreans would be on it. I mean, they would be on it. And you could hardly blame them. So one of the false sort of comparisons someone said is, the United States and the South Koreans both got the first patient on the same day or were alerted on the same day, but the South Koreans did a much better job. Well, yeah, because when your most significant minority, which travels, and they're close by to China, they're just across a little body of water, basically. When you're close, one of your closest neighbors has a pretty contagious disease, I think you're going to jump on it relatively soon. The United States, it's a lot more complex here. You have to understand, we have people in this country who want open borders. We kind of sort of do. We're trying to get them, we were always trying to get them in order, but, make no mistake, anybody who wants to get here usually could. Now there's a whole bunch of barriers, but, it was pretty easy to get into the United States, let's be honest. It's a free country. That's a downside of being in a free country. It's pretty easy to walk right in and do some mayhem. There's also a story about a Chinese scientist being caught with some diseases in his carrying case, which are very much like the crisis we're dealing with now. But that's another whole story. Anyhow, culturally, though, what you also have to understand about South Korea, up until 1987, they weren't even a democracy. So, and again, no slam to South Korea. Glad you're on board the democracy bandwagon. But prior to that, it was a different story. So you're talking about a culture and a people who a significant a portion of the population, certainly the older people, remember what it was like to live under a despot. And so when the government says we're locking it down, I mean, I got to imagine that a lot of those people are like, oh no, we're going back to that. That sucks. And, they're a little more prepared to do that. United States, back in 1987 was the days of Van Halen. So there's no locking down the United States. I mean, they've been trying to lock down people, and it sort of kind of worked. Sort of. There's still plenty of people breaking quarantine and getting in trouble. We just had a governor in Georgia just realized, oh my God, you could be asymptomatic? I didn't realize. So, things kind of, because we live in a free society that's kind of like all this jumbled group of various ethnic groups and races and people, we get this sort of hodgepodge version. We're not uniform. So like when there's an announcement, a lot of people just go, yeah, whatever. That's just the way it is here. It's not the way my impression is in South Korea. My impression in South Korea, it's a little more like everybody's kind of, I don't want to disparage anybody, but I got to imagine that when the government announces something, the federal government in South Korea announce something, they're not just going to ignore it. Whereas here, we've been ignoring the federal government for a lot of years. I mean, there are people who openly protest the federal government for a million different reasons. So herding Americans back into their homes for a few weeks is a little bit like herding cats. So the idea that, our president was just going to wave his magic wand and everything was going to be great because his response to the virus would have been awesome had he just done it a few days sooner is ridiculous. The fact is, Trump was ahead of the curve in front of most people. He wanted to shut down the flights to China, and everybody called him a racist for doing it. So what about all those people? This is, again, more evidence that the media is just in a constant state of criticizing Trump. It just can't help itself. Everybody who goes on TV has got to, I can't wait to get on TV to criticize Trump. I'm going to criticize Trump. I can't wait. This is just the more recent attack. And watch in the coming weeks. You're going to see everybody. Once we're out of this, once this is behind us, so I'm talking like the summertime, that's going to be the line of the attack. Well, Trump ignored his advisors and he should have responded weeks prior. Yeah. Meanwhile, we had Bill de Blasio telling people, it's fine, go out, have dinner. Had his, his health czar, whatever you call it in New York, in February, talking about, how it's not that big a deal. Flu kills more people. People are still posting that meme all over the internet. The flu killed more people. This killed more people. That killed more people. This is a serious thing. Serious. The numbers are still going up, but I don't know. I'd have to crunch the numbers to see if it's actually gone down. Now, in my county, it went up by about 100. That's a full third of where we were yesterday. Maybe not even that much. Maybe less than a third. More like a quarter of, because we're at like 233, something like that. Now we're at like another 100 above that. My calculations had been for a while that the cases were doubling every 2 days in New Jersey and generally in the United States. That didn't happen in South Korea as far as we know. Now, it could be possible South Koreans fudged their numbers a little bit. So they're not testing as much as we did. We have more tests out than a lot of these other countries. That makes a difference. If you say, well, we only got 10,000 cases, but you only tested 20,000 people, and then you say, well, we've got, 40,000 cases, but we tested 8 million people, that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. Those are not the right numbers, by the way. I forget what the right numbers are. So calm down, everyone. Don't jump on this South Korea did a much better job bandwagon. I'm not saying they did a bad job. I think they did a good job. But it's a different culture over there. They also have more I don't want to say surveillance because they are a liberal democracy. But they do have a little more of the kind of closeness to their homogenous population than, say, we do. So, it's much easier when everybody's kind of the same to run a country. And it's smaller. It's 1/7 the size of the United States. The United States, we have about 3 million Chinese people living in the United States, but we've had Chinese people coming here since the 1800s at least. In fact, in the 1800s, they had to stop immigration from China because The government at the time felt too many people were coming out of China into the United States. They built the railroads and a bunch of other stuff all along the West Coast. So they came here for opportunity. So a lot of that population, they're Chinese Americans. So it's not like they were a danger. The danger was Chinese citizens who had come out of Wuhan during a particular time. I mean, that's when it happened. And as I said in my previous video, make no mistake, word leaked out and people panicked and got the hell out of Wuhan if they had the money and the means to do so. They absolutely did. And even if they didn't, they might have gotten in a car and just freaked out. I certainly could have been one of those people because you know what a germaphobe I am. I just got a Stromboli, by the way. I cracked and finally ordered something. 2 weeks. I think that was pretty good. I didn't order anything for 2 weeks. And I did, DEFCON 5 lockdown. I liberated the food from the containers. I destroyed all the containers. I wiped down like crazy. So I feel pretty good that I managed to get okay. Plus, I got some vegetables in me. Some of that was vegetables, believe it or not. I ordered some nice spinach and a garlic and oil. It was delicious. But I digress. I digress because I had such a wonderful meal. Oh, it was great. It was fabulous. Anyhow, you need to keep this in perspective. Don't let these guys lead you down the path that, we did such a terrible response because South Korea did better. That's not necessarily true. I think you're comparing apples and oranges where you compare the two countries and their responses. You have to understand the makeup of the United States. The biggest ethnic group of people in the United States would be Germans at, I think it said 14.7% of the population. That's the biggest group in the United States. The biggest group in South Korea are Koreans, where it's 98% of the population. So that's different because people from different cultures, different backgrounds react differently to things. It doesn't surprise me at all that when word leaked out in Italy, in the northern provinces, that they were going to have a lockdown, that people took off. Because being Italians are very wary of everybody and everything, and the government especially. So it doesn't surprise me at all. It said, F this, I'm not going to let the government lock me down. Boom, and they took off. Americans are kind of the same way, a lot of them. But not all of them. Not all of them, because we have such a mixed, diverse group of people here. Some people, they're going to lock down and say, well, I'm going to listen to the government and I'm going to lock down, no question. Some people are going to go, oh, F this is conspiracy tinfoil hat time. This is the big takeover. And it may very well be, but that's a different video. My point in this video pisses me off that the media will mislead people like this just to score a few political points against Trump. And I feel that it's dishonest, and I feel it needs to be called out because as well as the South Koreans responded to this, seemingly so, although their numbers are still going up. Keep in mind, their numbers are still going up. They have 10,000 cases now. They're still going up. So, it wasn't total containment. If their caseload was 0, my first question will be, is it really 0? And number 2, since their case is 10,000, is it really 10,000? There are a lot of asymptomatic cases out there. There's definitely that case in the United States. We have thousands and thousands of people who have not been tested, who aren't showing signs, who probably have it, and they probably already have the antibodies. That is actually a good thing for them. Unfortunately, it's a bad thing for somebody who doesn't have the antibodies yet and could become very ill from this. They're working on a test, and I think Trump will probably talk about it today in the press conference. They're working on a test that's going to be easy to do to test everybody to make sure they have the antibodies because they want to test the healthcare workers because they suspect a lot of the healthcare workers already have it. They're exposed to different things all the time, so they may already have the antibodies, and that would allow them a little more well, I wouldn't say freedom, because they're still going to have to wear a mask and be sterile, but at least they'll know that they have a resistance to this horrible disease. And, if they slip up and make a mistake and the mask comes off or whatever, they'll know, like, well, it's not that big a deal. I'll wash up so I don't contaminate everybody else. They also would need to know that in case they're exposing their family members to it. And their family members may not have the same protection because they don't work in the healthcare industry. So there are lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff going on here. Again, don't freak out, but do your research a little bit. Get online and do some research into this. I said in the previous video, it pays to read, because when you have the context of things, you realize, some people will just keep pulling the wool over your eyes if you let them. So learn. Use this time to learn, because in the next couple of weeks, things may get a little dicey when we get back outside and we're all scrambling to get some work, and you may not have that kind of time anymore.